Check. Okay. Please name your assignments starting with your last name, not your first name, just to make sure everybody's good on that. I want to show you Connor's really quickly, his Coca-Cola one. He ran into issues with this. I've actually managed to figure out what's going on, so I wanted to have a conversation with him about that, but I also wanted to have a conversation with the rest of you guys about this as well. I have added a new PDF to our website, so if you want to go in and take a look at it, I'm going to go to our website and show you where it is. We were doing path work in session 4, and that's where this resource has actually been added, and it's sitting right here. What was there before was this pen tool and path. That's showing you guys, again, how to do the draw and then go back to the center point, hold down the option key and click to get rid of that. But it's this thing right here, path components, how overlapping paths intersect. If you actually take a look at this, I built this thing for you all. There are ways that you can actually cause paths to interact differently. And you'll see, this is the very top of our screen right here. This is the path drop-down menu right here. And these settings that we've got going right here are the things that can get you into trouble. So it'll just see, if we start with a single path that looks like this, and if we were to fill it, it would look like that. If you use the combined shape check mark up here at the top, when you actually do paths together where they intersect, they will combine into one. If you use this subtract front shape, you will get this, and then so on and so on. Intersect shapes will show this part right here, and then exclude overlapping shapes will get here. So Connor, as near as I can tell, what has happened with yours is that, because here, you guys can take a look at his path right here. You can see that there's two different weird things on this path. One of them is the Coca-Cola like you would normally expect it to be. The other one is actually got gray on the interior with the whole rest of this image also being gray. Watch what happens in the difference in these two. I'm going to use the direct selection tool. I'm going to use the path selection tool, which is the black-headed arrow, and I'm simply going to drag across his first part. So this path has actually now been active, and if I load this as a selection, you'll see that you get the little marching ants are all going around the Coca-Cola, which is exactly what we would expect and what we want to have happen. If I hit Command D to deselect, and instead now I'm going to kick out, I'm going to select the cola version of it that has got those grayed out parts, and I'm going to click and drag across it. Again, it selects the path, but now when I load this as a selection, you will see that not only did it load all the marching ants around this, but the marching ants are also around the entire exterior of this. And it's telling me that this path is not a conventional path, that this path has actually used one of those wrong settings. So to fix that, I'm going to hit Command D to deselect. I've still got the path is actually selected. Hit the P key to get the pen tool, because that's where this drop-down menu is, and it's sitting right here. And you can see in this case, this is actually set up to subtract from front shape. So when you were doing your path, were you ever using any of this drop-down menu part? So I think I'm not sure what caused this. All I know is that what maybe happened was, remember I told you guys when you're doing path work, you always want to work from the outside in. You always want to do your most extreme outside selections first, and then whatever's on the inside of that, and then whatever's on the inside of that. I'm wondering, I don't know, but I'm wondering if for some reason maybe you started on the inside and then moved to the outside, and it's caused this to happen. So to fix this, what I'm looking for is, and again, at this stage of the game, I don't know which one of these I'm actually trying to get it to do, but I can watch and see what goes on here in this path part right here, because what I need is the cola part to actually look like the Coca part. That's in the end what's going on. So I'm going to come up and I'm going to click on Combine Shapes, and you see I end up getting it that way. This is now correct. So now if I've got that same path is still selected, now if I click to load this, you'll see I just get the marching ants around the path. It hasn't selected the entire exterior. It's now functioning the way I want it to function. Does that sort of make sense? So, guys, I got to be honest with you. I don't ever use that menu. I never go up to that menu. I never need to do this. Again, if you just follow that whole process of working from the outside in, but Connor, you're not the only person that this has happened to. I've seen this before. Does this make sense to everyone? Are we good on that part? So I just wanted to clear that up so everybody knew how that part could actually work. All right, I'm going to close this up. Take a look at a couple others. We don't need to save that. I'm going to take a look at Susan's face real quick. No, her face image, not her face. And you can see here in this, so what Susan has got going on here is she has actually got, and I was just a little confused about this, but I think maybe it's it's the conversation I want to have. So what's going on here is that she's actually got a layer sitting down here at the very bottom that has got the image on it, it's got a pixel mask on it, and it's got the vector mask on it. This is what was created by the path. And then it looks like for her, because she felt, I think she was nervous on some level that both of these masks were either competing with one another or they didn't need to both be on or something like that. So at any rate, it looks like she just simply copied another layer of this and added her vector mask alone to the top, which is fine. I mean, there's nothing inherently wrong with this. It's just, it seems redundant. It doesn't really need to be there. So if you had this guy turned on instead, now what's happening is all three of these are actually controlling the mask. If I zoom in really closely to take a look at this, you'll actually see, let me see one thing here really quick. Yeah. So I'm going to take a look just at the pixel mask by itself. I'm holding down the Option key and clicking on that. And you can see that this edge is actually razor sharp. This was never softened, I don't think, the selection was not feathered before this guy got made. So what I mean by that is this. I'm going to actually do this on your top layer up here so that we can compare the two. I'm going to throw away this vector mask because I just want something else on there. And I'm not going to save this, so you'll see what's going on. I'm going to go back to the path menu. And I'm going to load this as a selection. Simply Command-click loads it as a selection. And this is where, this is the next step that you need to do. If you actually just build your mask using the selection, it's too perfect. The path is actually too perfect a line. It looks like it's been cut out. And that's not what we want to do. You've got to pull some of the edge off of this. So to do that, it's up to the Select menu, down to Modify, down to Feather. And in this case, I'm going to leave it as a half pixel. If this was a really high-res image, sometimes you have to actually get these pixel counts up a little bit higher. They'll go up to 1 pixel. Sometimes if it's a super high-res image, it may be 2 pixels, it may be 3. If it's an extremely small-res picture, it may be only a third of a pixel, not even a half of a pixel. It all has to do with resolution. Does that sort of make sense? So anyway, I'm going to leave this as a half, and I'm going to go ahead and say OK to that. It just softened that edge a little bit, and then I'm going to actually apply it to this profile right here so that we can compare both of them. So I'm going to actually apply it there, and then I'm going to turn this guy on. And if you zoom in really close to this, you can actually see the difference. I'm going to actually turn this guy off. I'm going to do a snapshot of this, and then I'm going to trade them and do another snapshot. This is a great way to actually see sort of befores and afters when you've got to turn a whole bunch of layers off. All I've done is made one snapshot with the top layer on, the softened mask, and then I turned it off and the other one on and made another snapshot of the hard edge version of this with using the unsoftened mask. And then simply go up to the top of your history. And you can see now when I turn on that number 1, see how much softer this little edge is in right here? And if I go to number 2, how razor sharp that is? That's what I'm talking about here. That is the difference. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, in the old days, there was no way to actually feather a vector mask because the vector mask that's actually on here, again, I'm going to pull this to the side so that you can actually see this. So I'm going to turn this guy off. I'm just working on the bottom right here. If you actually take a look at this, let's do this. I'm going to actually pull the vector mask up here. We'll look at this top one up here and get rid of that. Okay, so if we take a look right now, all three of these masks are actually controlling this. I've got the softer mask on there, but this vector mask is actually controlling things as well. If you want to turn the vector mask off, you simply hold down the shift key and click on it, and it puts on this big X. So now you can see the softer edge that's being applied by this softer mask is actually controlling this because I turned off the visibility of the path. If I turn it back on, you'll see that that line sharpens up again and also shows the mask. Is that making sense what's going on here? So if you want to control these, simply use this. So if I prefer to have the vector mask controlling it and not my pixel mask, hold down the shift key and click on this and you can turn this off. Now the vector mask is in control of this. Does that make sense? However, again, it's too sharp. This never used to be a feature. Going back into Photoshop, not too far, it was not a feature, but it is now. If you select the vector mask to make it active and look up in your properties palette up in here, you can now feather a vector mask, and it's sitting right here. You simply grab this guy. I'm going to over-exaggerate it so you can see what's going on, but you see how soft that edge is now? Like ridiculously soft. Again, and I would put this up again in that sort of like half pixel range, whatever. So now the vector mask is controlling it. The pixel mask has been turned off, but this edge has actually been made softer because I actually feathered it up here in the properties panel. Does that make sense, everyone? Are there questions about this? So to a lot of you, I ended up sending back stuff saying, you haven't feathered your mask, you haven't feathered your mask, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so you get where it's going. Okay, so not to, again, when I do these things, I don't do them to pick on anybody. I'm not saying, okay, I'm showing you this because you blah, 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 blah. It's symptomatic of what was happening a lot in the class. So I'm going to show Sarah's really quick. What is wrong with this? Looking at the layers palette, can anybody say anything that's good, bad, or indifferent about this? Well, that would be the first thing, right? So when this image of the face got brought in, the metal layer was selected, but the layers that were controlling the metal were underneath it. So this thing got brought in the wrong layer stack, and that's why you got this weird thing that's on her face. So the first thing I would do to fix that is to drag this up to the very top so that it's sitting above other things that are right or wrong with this. There is no path. So what happened here when Sarah did this, she actually did the path work, made the mask for her layer, and then dragged the entire thing into the metal image. And she left the path back in the image that had the face to begin with. How could she have avoided that? She could have added the path to the layer and then drug the whole thing over, which is what most of you guys did, or at least some of you guys did. Or couldn't she have just drugged the metal to the face? Why wouldn't you drag this whole thing, the background, to the figure where you had done all your path work? Because that way you keep the path. So all of those are not really great on here, but there's one real hyper glaring error in all of this. And it's the thing I will tell you right now. So you get one more shot at this. Not applying masks, but every time I see an applied mask after this, I just flat out am going to fail the grade. I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to say you applied the mask. This is destructive. This image is gone. The old background, that Goldie background, whatever, this is why. Isn't the mask doing this work? So a mask got put on this. Then the mask got removed, and when it was removed, it said, apply the mask, which destroyed this. This is no longer recoverable. If this edge is wrong, I can't fix it because I have no background. It doesn't exist anymore. It's gone. Why would I do that? The mask is doing that for me. The mask is controlling what I can see. This never needed to happen. And it's destructive. The virgin of this is no longer in this image. I can't undo this. If I don't have that face part, if that's gone for some reason, if somebody sent me this, there's nothing I can do with this. I can't fix it. I can't change it. I can't refine the edge. I can't do anything. This is baked. Make sense?
Okay, I have a question.
Shoot.
So I did that on mine.
Yes.
But when I first dragged it over, everything was like small on mine.
So when you brought it to the metal,
Like I had the face in the path in the mask or whatever.
Right.
It was like it wouldn't like fit to the.
it came in smaller on the metal part.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
We'll take a look at it, but
Smaller in the thing too.
yeah, I know. But again, because you still have the links between all of this, you just transform it and bring it up again.
It like would not do it.
No?
It, like,
Well, no, we'll take a look at yours and just see, okay? All right, so again, not to pick on anyone in particular. Same deal. Destructive, baked in.
Is the only way to apply the mask when you are like trying to delete it and then it says like delete apply?
If you want to delete it, if you want to get rid of the mask for some reason, you just delete it. If you want to cancel that part, you just hit cancel, but there again, there's no reason to apply it. You don't need to.
Right, but like this mistake, is that the only way that can happen?
I'm sorry?
Like is when you like drag it down to delete it and like accidentally clicking apply mask, is it the only way that you can accidentally apply the mask?
It is. It is, yeah. You just want to avoid that dialog box altogether unless you're just trying to get rid of the mask. You're trying to delete it, but you never want to apply it. Again, there's no recovering from this. So there will never be a situation that's any different in this. If you need, so for instance, when we get further into this game here, when we get to doing transforms and puppet warping and that kind of stuff, you actually do want your image to appear to be isolated like this. But there's a way we do it using smart objects. It's a tricky way of doing it that it looks like you have applied a mask. It gets rid of your background, but you haven't really applied the mask. But we'll get to that when we get to transforming. Okie dokie. We've already talked about visibility. So Carson, I've got a note on here to show yours, and I have no idea why.
Maybe I think it was like when I made the mask, it like wouldn't show her face. It just made her face like red or white, like in the layer below it.
Yeah.
It like when I made it on the girl, it like it just click on it, unclick her face, and then click the red thing.
Yeah, I didn't understand the red thing either.
I don't know how that happened though.
The red thing?
Yeah.
I don't either.
I don't know why it didn't show her face. It just made it like a color. I have no idea. Also, how would I avoid it from getting small when I move over?
Well, so this comes in, if it came in like this, I'm going to actually put the layer mask up here on this guy so that we can actually see sort of more what's going on. So you can see the mask is out of register with your figure. So this is no longer in register. That's why we're getting this weird thing right here. Mm-hmm. But as long as the mask is linked to the image, you can transform everybody. You know, you can rotate it. You can do anything.
Right.
Does that answer?
Well, like when I move it all over, is it always gonna see how the red box isn't filling the whole?
It might, because again, it has to do. You're bringing the entire image over, and if the image you're bringing it to is larger,
okay,
then you have these transparent edges. That's what's going on, but don't let that throw you. Okay. All right. And one last one I wanted to show you guys really quickly. And this was Elisa's body one. And you can see in her case, she, and this is fine with me, if there was some compelling reason to do that, you can see up here, she's actually got a copy of this image that did, where the mask was applied, and it actually removed that background. I don't care about that. If you want, it's just an extra, it's a superfluous layer up here because she's actually still got the virgin copy image down here that's intact with a pixel mask on here. And again, this is one of those cases where both of these masks are having an impact on this. So if you take a zoom in here and look really close, you can see she actually has feathered her edge. I'm gonna hide the pixel mask really quickly, and you can see that that edge is actually nice and soft. And so again, I simply wanted to show this to say to you guys that, you know, some of this is actually being really well done, and this was actually a really well done one. So when it came to doing the knockout, the second part of the assignment, are there still questions about that? Remember the girl just on the green background? I asked you to do it 3 different ways: to use color range, to use a channel, and also to do zero selective color. Who in this room is not comfortable with all 3 of those things? Do we need to look at any of them? Are we good on this? Don't be embarrassed. If you're not completely 100% on this, we should go over it. If you're good on this, we're going to move on. Okay. Okay. Yes, you do. But let's just take a look at this really quickly. I just think that makes sense. Okay. So if you guys can find it again, it would be assignment. It's in the session 5. That's where the file is. I'm fairly certain. Yep. So it's this one, this 081225. Go ahead and open this guy up. And I'm just going to blow through this really quickly, all the ways that we could actually do this. So I'm going to just simply double click on the hand to get it to be large enough for me to see it. So the first way we're going to go after is using levels. So I'm going to click on the red channel. Not levels, channels. I'm looking at the red channel. Good separation between her skin, but the hair in the background are almost identical, so it's not a good option for me. The green is a little bit better, and then the blue is worse. So the green channel is the one. Now this just happens to be coincidence. It's a green background. The green channel happens to be the one. That's not always going to be the case. So you just can't assume that, oh, okay, because it's green. You've really got to go through and look at these guys. So grab the green channel and copy it by simply dragging it down to the little dog ear guy at the bottom, and it's going to be named green copy. I'm going to rename this and call this channel knockout.
And are you separating the skin tone from the background, or is it like the hair?
I am. It's the hair. The hair is going to be the harder one to get after, because to be perfectly honest with you, the skin, even though that's going to be a challenge on this one, I would probably do the skin with a pen tool anyway, especially because of the soft focus on the edge of this image. So at any rate, Alt T, like that. So my first job again is to actually go in. I'm going to go in and take a look at a hunk of hair in here. And again, this is not too dissimilar to the stuff that we were working with before. I'm looking at hair curls right here. There's areas here in this hair curl here that, right, like here in the very bottom, in this area right down in here, just so you can see it in here. This is actually pretty transparent in here. I don't think that this should be a solid black in here. However, where this hair is crossing the other, there's sort of a darker range right in here. I'm feeling pretty confident that this area right in here should actually be black. I can take a look. There's a little black part of her hair right here. That probably should also be black. But if I want to play it safe, I'm going to come right over here into this part of her hair right in here, because I know that there's enough going on in here that I don't think there is transparency coming through here. There is in this area, but not in this guy right here. So I'm going to go to, again, my color sampler tool, and I'm going to drop a point right in there. Then I'm going to just use the space bar to temporarily get a hand. I've got to get away from this hair. There's too much hair in the background out here. I've got to get to clean background, so I'm going to come down all the way to the bottom down here, and I'm going to click on that guy as well. And then again, using my color readouts right here, I'm going to use my drop-down menus to change these to RGB and to RGB. And then I'm going to double click on the hand to zip back out so I can watch what's going on. And again, Command L to bring up the levels dialog box. And in doing the levels dialog box, I know that this number 1, my first point in the hair, needs to go to black. So I'm just watching these after figures right here. I'm going to grab my black point slider and start to drag it up. I'm still watching the info palette. I'm not watching my image at all. I get close to 0, so I'm at a 6 right here. I'm going to go to my arrow keys to actually tap it in so I don't hit one more level of tone than I need to get that to 0. That's why I use my arrow keys to do it. I'm going to grab the white point slider and drag it back in the opposite direction. And again, I'm going to get close to 255. I'm going to be at 253. I'm going to go to my arrow keys and then tap that in, and I'm at 255 right now, and I'm going to say OK to that. And you can see that it does a good job of separating the hair. It does an awful job of separating the skin. So for me to fix the skin part of this, I'm going to go back to my, so it's done what I wanted it to do. I'm going to go back to the skin part of this. I'm going to zoom in on this side over here. I'm going to hit the P key to get the pen tool, and I'm going to outline this girl's face starting at her earlobe right here. So I need everybody to do this with me. You can't practice this enough, trust me. And it goes quick. Again, because I'm pretty much and again, I have a problem now. I can't get outside of her neck right here because my cursor changes. It goes from the pen tool to being the cursor. So again, I need to be working on the pasteboard, which is the F key. So that now takes me to the pasteboard. So now I actually can get outside of this image. And again, I'm simply going to click and drag that part in. That came a little too far out, so. And then simply coming around, just dropping down points. They don't need to be pretty. I actually am going to grab the collar on the other side. And then I don't like all those little scraggly hairs that are back behind her anyway, so I'm going to get rid of all of that. And again, I'm simply coming back to the center, holding down my Option key to get rid of that point. I'm also going to get rid of the soft focus edge that's on the side of her face. That's why it looks all too aggressive. And then I'm not going to worry about this ear over here and this part right here. I'm going to go ahead and leave that. I think I've gotten that in my original mask part pretty well. So then, again, I'm simply going to hold down Space, Command, Option to zoom back out. And then I'm going to simply come over here to get back to my original point. Again, I don't really care about this upper line here. All of that, I don't need to worry about that. I just wanted to establish this edge that's going down here. My very next move is over to my Path palette, because I'm going to use this for all of my masks. This is actually just a way to clean everybody up. So I'm going to double click on the thing that says Work Path, and I'm going to call it Lower Face. And say OK to that, and then Command click to load this as a selection. Again, exactly like we were talking before on doing the metal work, you need to soften up this edge. So up to the Select menu, down to Modify, and again down to Feather. I'm going to put in a full pixel here because this is a higher res image. So I'm going to do a full pixel feather on that to actually soften it. I'm going to say OK to that. And then I'm going to go back to the mask that I was working on. It's this guy right here. And I know that I want this area that's in here to be black because my hair is already black. Now my mask is going to be inverted, but that's fine with me. As a matter of fact, I maybe need a little bit more pen tool to get just this edge of her hair, of her ear right here. So I'll fix that in just a second. But at any rate, I know that that's what's going on here. I know that this needs to be black. Hit the D key to default your background colors to black and white. Black is my background color now, so hold down Command Delete. It fills that with black. Command D to deselect. I'm going to go after that little bit of hair that I missed that's actually right here. It's this edge right here. It's just, I need to go ahead and connect that. So again, I'm just using the pen tool to select that part, and then I'm just going to come around and complete that path. I'm going to rename this ear, additional ear. And say, okay, Command click to load that as a selection, up to the select menu, down to modify, down to feather. Go ahead and feather that at 1 radius pixel, and again, fill this with black. Command D to deselect. So this part's actually worked out pretty well for me. I just need to finish cleaning the rest of this whole thing up. So the rest of all of this simply needs, all the figure part needs to be black. So I'm going to hit the B key to get a brush. I'm going to change the hardness of this brush to somewhere in the middle part right here. 100% opacity, 100% flow, but I'm going to change my overlay. I'm going to change this to an overlay brush and hit make sure black is your foreground color. So the X key is giving me black as my foreground color. And I'm simply going to, again, I'm just painting in to try to get this edge in here a little bit harder and to this edge to get that a little bit harder as well. Then you can simply go to a normal brush. Make sure it's a completely hard brush so that you don't get any overspray at all. And then simply come back in here and make my brush a little bit smaller and take my flow all the way back up and simply go in and paint in this part because I've got the outside lines. I don't need any more of that part. That part's actually worked for me. That part's all worked for me. I'm going to zoom back out and all the rest of this I can actually get with simply just a regular brush. So make my brush a little bit larger. All of this needs to go to black. Again, stay away from your edges up here. I'm going to go after this edges up there using an overlay brush. But all the rest of this can actually be painted out black because that's all got to be part of my mask. So that part's gone. I'm going to zip up to this area that's up into here and know what here needs to stay. That's background in there. That all needs to stay as background. So I'm back to an overlay brush. I'm going to make it a soft brush. I'm going to kick back out and again, I'm going to go after this part in here. Again, staying away from those edges as much as I possibly can. A little bit smaller brush. I'm actually going to tighten that brush up a little bit. That seemed a little overspray. So up to about a 50% hardness on that. Oops. That's background right there that I just hit. I don't want to do that. And the rest of that part looks good. Look at the other side over here. All of this can actually, yeah, that's all black. That's background that's right in there. And this up at the top is also all background out there, so you don't want to hit any of that. Double click on the hand to kick back out. I'm feeling relatively good, although there's some bad background that's sitting down over here. So I'm going to zoom into this area. Again, I can control that all with my lower face mask, lower face path. So again, I'm coming back over to lower face, Command click to load that as a selection. Now in this case, the selection is actually the inside part right here. That's not what I want. I want to actually paint on this edge out here. So I need to invert my selection. So again, I'm going to come up to the select menu down to inverse. Now I can actually, you'll see I've got marching ants going around everything else. What's being protected now is her neck and her cheek, the side of her face. But before I use that brush, I want to soften this edge a little bit. So up to the select menu, down to modify, down to feather. Go ahead and leave it as a 1 pixel radius feather. And then again, the B key to get a brush. I'm going to take it and make it a normal brush. I am going to make it a completely hard brush because I don't want to worry about any overspray. The quality of this edge is determined by the selection. And Command Z, make sure white is your foreground color, and simply paint and get rid of that guy. Command D to deselect, and this is the beginning. This is how I would do my channel knockout. So to see how this works, I'm going to scroll all the way back up to the top, click on the RGB part, double click on the hand to make it full screen. I'm going to come over to my layers palette here. I'm actually going to put I want just a white layer on top to see what this looks like. So I'm going to come to my adjustment layer at the bottom, the circle that looks half white and half black. I'm going to click on this. Guys, we'll get through this and take a break. I'm sorry, it's gone over a little bit. I'm simply going to add a solid color to this. If you don't have white, if white didn't come up, usually what it does when you load this thing, it picks your foreground color. White was my foreground color. If that wasn't the case for you, simply type in 255 red, 255 green, 255 blue, that is white, and go ahead and say okay to that. And then I'm going to duplicate this background layer. I'm simply going to come down to the bottom and make a duplicate of it. I'm going to drag it up above my solid color. It's now sitting up on top. I'm going to double click on its name and I'm going to rename it Channel Knockout. And say okay, and then I'm going to come over to my channels palette and load that knockout that I just built. So again, command click loads that as a selection. Back over here on my layers and simply add a layer mask to this. Again, it needs to be inverted because it's showing the background. I want it to hide the background, so simply hit Command I. And that's the beginning. And in this case, it's okay. I've still got spill in there. That seemed to me to be a whole lot more work than I want to put into this. There's got to be faster ways of doing this, and we will look at them when we get back. So let's call it 10:45 right now. If you guys could be back at 11, that'd be great.